Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Chandra Sanders, founder of Heels and Hustle, and this series is called She Who Dares Building in the Evolving Economy. Because daring is not just about starting something new, daring is also about how you choose to build. It's about choosing alignment over urgency, it's about choosing clarity over noise, and intention over imitation. So, the truth is, many of the systems that shape how we work, how we build today, were really not designed with this level of intentionality in mind. And yet, there are builders, just like our guest today, who are choosing to do it differently anyway. They are not just building companies, they are building with structure, they're building with conviction, and they're building with alignment from the start. So, that's what this series is about. Because in today's economy, daring is not disruption for the sake of it, right? Daring is building something that actually holds. So today's conversation is called Purpose as Infrastructure, because purpose is often talked about as philosophy. However, but for founders and leaders, purpose has to become something much more than practical. It becomes the architecture behind how organizations are designed, how they're led, and how they're experienced. So I am really glad to welcome today. We're joined by Aisulu, and she is the founder of Quor. Aisulu's work focuses on bridging something that organizations really struggle with, the gap between what they say and what they stand for and how they actually operate. So her perspective is especially powerful because she doesn't just talk about purpose, she designs systems around it. So Aisulu, welcome. I'm really glad you're here
Hi.
today.
Hi,
So
thank you for having me and thank you for that amazing intro.
of course, of course. And so at this time, before we dive in, I want you to share a little bit about you. I've given you a little intro, but I mean, you're so much bigger than what I could actually say in a few seconds, right? So I would
Sure.
love for you to share a little bit about your work and what led you to focus on purpose in this way.
Sure. So, to everyone who didn't hear, I'm Aisulu. I'm a founder of Core, and Core is a more mindful approach to business. Well, I know we all hear about like the grind, hustling, locking in, and all of those other buzzwords that people love to use to show how hard they work and how important their businesses are. Core kind of turns it onto its head, and we're a lot less about hustle and more about intentional work. And like Chandra just said, we bridge the gap between like talking the talk and walking the walk. So everybody starts a company with some kind of a vision, some kind of a solution to a problem, but a lot of people get lost somewhere in between and start focusing more on metrics and the bottom line and money and forget their purpose, which leads to a lot of the reason I started Core is because I worked with a lot of companies in the startup space, early companies, mid-sized companies, and I've noticed a common thread with them that every single one um, kind of just like rushed constantly, and it was more about putting out fires than it was about building the dream that the company starts with. So I got inspiration to start Core and help companies like that avoid kind of like the spiral and the grind.
Yeah, because I mean, that's what has been about, the spiral and the grind, and you just work
Yeah.
your way through it. So
Yeah.
I believe what you're doing is so important, and especially even more important during this time where, purpose should be of utmost, um, you know, of everything that we're doing, right? And so,
Yeah.
you know, when we talk about purpose, right, a lot of people think about mission statements or values, but your work suggests something deeper, right? So, when did you start to see purpose needed and move beyond philosophy and into a structure? You shared a
Yeah.
visual that really brings this to life. So, how purpose actually connects across different parts of the business, right? So, let's pull that up.
Sure. So this is our tagline, Core will build bridges between your dream and reality. So funnily enough, I didn't start my business because with this idea that purpose is everything. I actually started as a freelancer and I was a UX UI designer. Then also that grew into like some creative director roles. And then down the line, even like COO, interim COO roles and that type of stuff. So I started my career with building structure and building a brand for multiple different companies. And every time that I would pick up the same tasks, right, building a structure for a new company, I would notice that it's built on the same steps, which and at the core of them is purpose. And I'll show you the visual now. So as a business, right, not to overwhelm everyone, you don't have to like take this in too much, but the idea is each company has communication channels of how they communicate to the public, right? So you have your website, maybe you have a physical store, you have a product, then you have your employees, then you have your support channels, your public image for like commerce businesses. You also have your fulfillment, and each one of those channels has other micro channels within it. So that's many, 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 like, it's a whole ecosystem that you have to keep running, and it has to be smooth and homogeneous, because if you don't have consistency, then you lose trust of the audience. Um, and the way to find that consistency, like, that's been the biggest challenge of a lot of businesses that I've worked with. They keep having to like resolve the problems they've already solved, which seemed like very like such a waste of time and such a pity,
Yes.
especially for these businesses that have these like grand visions and you'd love to see them succeed, but then they get lost in the weeds. So the way to I saw the to fix that is just have one singular message, like your purpose, your soul, and have it just go through every single channel. So no business would be the same, but all businesses should be like consistent, right? So if you're someone who prides yourself on being human centric, then your email outreach or your marketing wouldn't sound like something from a company that's more like towards high performance or productivity or anything like that. So by keeping all of these consistent, you also keep the trust of the customer. So like you might be saying, we're a sustainable business and we're here to like change the world and make, let's say, like skincare more sustainable. If then you go and your packaging is made out of plastic, nobody's going to believe anything else you say tomorrow or next month or in your next launch. So customer trust is really easy to lose, as we all know, and a lot of like outside factors do come around to mess it all up for us. So why leave it like
Yes.
not why not control the things that you can?
Hmm.
So that's how purpose basically came about to the
Well,
structure of a company. Mhm.
Well, I love this so much. So, like when you said these are all the communications channels, right? Either nonverbal or verbal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so when these channels are not aligned, it really it creates a lot of mistrust. And
Yeah.
like we kind of said earlier, now during this stage in our society, trust is of the utmost importance, right? Because
Yeah.
people are looking for something to trust because there's so many mixed messages, so many, like you said, a product is saying or a company is saying they're sustainable, but the products that they're selling, it doesn't really equal that,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that. So, one of the themes that we're also exploring is building from alignment rather than urgency, right? So,
Yeah.
like you said, the startup culture, everybody's just running and moving fast. And then, by the time they realize that everything's messed up, it's too late. And they have to do a
Yeah.
lot of backtracking. So, a
Yeah.
lot of founders are building fast, they're not always aligned, right? So,
Yeah.
what does it actually look like to build from alignment in practice? So,
Yeah.
looking at what you just shared, where do you see most organizations breaking the alignment?
So I would say a lot of organizations that I've seen break their alignment right at the first step. If you look at this whole diagram, right at the very beginning, you have the soul of the company. Most
Mhm.
people never even bother to find that out. That's the problem. So if you never know like what it is that you stand for, what is your vision, what is your message beyond like sales and becoming the next unicorn, next whatever. Every single other channel after that, forget about it, because you don't know what you're aligning for. Like, you cannot align if you don't know what it is your, like, the gold standard is, right?
Oh, so they're missing the
Um,
first step. Great.
yeah, they're missing the first step. That's pretty
Yes.
much it. And there are companies where I come across, and they're passionate about the product, right? And they would have, like, accidentally they would get a bunch of channels right, just because of, like, pure, like, instinct, and how, like, they feel it inside them. Like, this
Mhm.
soul that we talk about, it's not something that I come up with, or, like, comes from thin air. It's something that's inside every single founder. I haven't met a single founder who doesn't have it in them. Like,
Mhm.
that doesn't exist. So the difference is getting it out and articulating it. So articulating it properly. And how I do it is I sit down with every founder that I start working with, and I find their ikigai, which is, like, not to get too into specifics, but it's like a Japanese concept of, like, your purpose, your reason for being. So once you flush that out, it's a lot easier to align everything
So,
else.
like you said, it's a lot easier once you flush that out. Step one,
Exactly.
right?
Step
Let's get
one.
into the core.
Actually know
Exactly.
why you're doing all of this.
Right.
Because, yeah. And beyond that, like, even having a message so strong that it truly, like, comes from, like, your hearts of hearts, not just something
Mhm.
to slap on a website.
Mhm.
I've had myself nights where I was just, like, way too tired, way too burnt out, where I was like, why am I even doing this? Like, I don't want to be a founder. Like, this is not really what I started this for. And
Mhm.
then I have my ikigai just, like, on my wall in my office, and I see it, and I'm like, "Damn it, I have to keep
It brings you
going."
back. It brings you back
Brings
to the
you
core.
back. Brings you
Yes.
back every time. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So we talked about the alignment, right? So, of course, there's a cost. There's a real cost to getting this wrong, not just culturally, but
Sure.
economically, right? So, you have another visual you shared,
Yeah.
a stat that really puts this into perspective. So, let's bring that up.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Yes, let's talk about this. What
so
is the actual cost of the getting this misaligned, of low
yeah,
engagement?
sure. So the problem, as you can see from this side, is not starting a business. There's a new business every single day. There's 15,000 actually in the US every day. But the problem comes when you start to get very busy, and you start to build a team, right? So everybody knows, if you started a business on your own, first it's you, or you and co-founder, and you're carrying everything with just your own talents. But once you start to build in a team, that's when you start losing a lot of the message. You start having to spend more time managing the team. And this is where, like, globally, we lose $8.9 trillion of global GDP due to low engagement. So these are employees who don't care. I'm sure everybody's had experience with someone like that, like a person who's there for a paycheck. They don't care what happens to the company once they leave. They don't care what happens next month, as long as they get their money and they get out at 4 p.m., 5 p.m., whenever your workday finishes. So yeah, and
So,
each
well,
business on
despite
average, yeah.
no, keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
That
interrupt.
was That's okay. My Wi-Fi can be a little bit laggy. Um, but yes, each business on average loses annually $500 billion just to low engagement.
That is insane. So, why do you think that so many organizations still treat purpose as secondary despite numbers like this?
Because when you see low engagement, right, in a like conservative, like classical corporate environment, you think, okay, we need to add perks. Like Google, like, we're gonna feed them 5 times a day. We're gonna give them a higher salary. We will give them gym memberships. Like, all of these, like, also became very popular in the startup world. All of these, like, little bells and whistles that everybody likes to add, but as we've seen with what happens over time, it's not enough. You can never add enough bells and whistles for people to feel purpose, which, again, people don't link low engagement to purpose, but as I show here, you can see. So today's teams, and by that I mean Gen Z, millennials, they actually expect purpose, and it to 86 to 90, 89% of these individuals, a sense of purpose in their work just is the determining factor in their job satisfaction. So this is not a stat that you see around that much, I would say. This is something people don't talk about. People talk about adding more to the to-do list, doing like tomato techniques, more productivity, but it's not what they don't understand. They don't have a problem of productivity. They have a problem of lack of purpose. And people of my generation, like younger generation, we can tell when something's unauthentic. We've grown up with people, you know, with pretty glossy facades selling us a dream that doesn't exist. Like we know when something's authentic. So yeah, and that's something corporations miss.
This is like a really amazing stat, right?
Mm,
So, like you said, this is something that corporations miss, right? So, what does that
yeah.
mean for founders and leaders today? What happens to organizations that ignore this?
So it's actually very interesting what recognizing a stat like this can do for you, because like me and you, we're not Google, Uber, like
Mhm,
these my giant organizations, right? Those organizations have deep, deep pockets. They can pay high salary. They have a great trusted reputation. But businesses like yours and mine, or I'm assuming a lot of people who are attending this call right now, they don't have that kind of leverage. And what they don't know is setting up purpose, finding their purpose, communicating it effectively can actually um, give you an edge. I personally know multiple people who work for Google, LinkedIn, Facebook. Like these are my friends. And what they tell me time and time again is they come back from their high paying job and they, at the end of the day, and they say, I just don't know why I'm doing this. I
mhm,
feel useless. I feel like I don't have purpose. Like
mhm,
to word, that's what they're telling me. And it feels like they don't matter. Like at the end of the day, no matter how high your price tag is, like that's sense of purpose cannot be bought like that.
exactly. This is extremely important. And now, you shared about, engagement. You shared about the different, Gen Z, the millennials, right? Like you've shared a lot of information about that and the numbers and the
Yeah.
stats that are really astounding if you don't like center purpose from the start. So now I want to kind of bring it back to founder conviction. Okay.
Sure.
So let's talk about bringing it back to the founder. So, because building this way requires conviction, right? You've had the conviction, I've had it, So, it's often easier to follow existing models rather than to design something intentional, which is what you've done. So, what
Yeah.
kind of conviction does it take to build with purpose as infrastructure based on the founders you've seen do it well, the founders you've seen have not done it well?
Yeah. Um, I would say that with purpose, conviction kind of comes
Mm,
naturally.
mm,
And I'll explain what I mean by that is I don't think that any given person has like finite amount of energy or conviction. They're just have things that their soul is not excited about. They're just not, you know, they're not doing something that truly, truly like ignites their soul, you know. And I've seen it with founders at their lowest lows, like everyone's gone through it or seen someone go through it when you have a dip, right? You've either it's going through a scale or like you're scaling or you've tried something, it didn't work, and that like low point where you think, I just want to quit. Like
mm,
I don't care for this anymore. I want to quit. But you have like your employees, their salaries on the line. And then there's a point of ego. Like we all have it. You build something, you've spent so much time pouring your like energy into um your venture, and then what gives back that conviction, right, in a moment like that is usually people look at it like, okay, like how can I make money and like very superficial things. But I've seen when you redirect your attention to why did you start this? What is your purpose here? Like, what do you want to leave behind, right? What kind of imprint on the world do you want to leave with your company? That's when people's in the lowest lows, like I've seen people almost depressed and burnt out, just their eyes just light up, and when they just remember their purpose, and it gives you the engine to like keep going. um and I honestly think like defining a purpose also helps you not get too stuck in like, so say you started a business and it's something and then it needs to pivot.
Mhm.
A great thing about a purpose is it is more broad than a product offering. You know, you're offering a product and you want to keep offering a product and you're so focused on the product, it's really hard to pivot. When your purpose is broader than that, it's actually so much easier to pivot and to see so many more opportunities come your way. You become so much more optimistic, and then it's easier to just keep going. So yeah.
It's easier. But then also, when you think about purpose and being rooted into something that is meaningful, that, it aligns your values, your culture, everything is tied to this, your communication, like everything is tied to this. The way you operate on a daily basis is tied to the purpose from step one,
Yeah.
right? And so that
Yeah.
also helps to increase and add to your employer branding, attract the right
Yeah.
employees, and,
For
also
sure.
reduce the attrition. So it's so important, especially today, like with all of the things going on, right?
Yeah.
Employees want to be aligned with brands that are rooted in purpose. And so this is
Yes.
extremely important. So, my next question for you, right? So, the series is called She Who Dares. And of course, you are a daring one, which is why you are here. So, I want to close here.
Good.
After everything that you've seen and you've built, what does daring look like to you now?
um I would say when I started, daring looked completely different to me than what it looks like now. When I started, daring was doing things in spite of being afraid, pushing myself to my limits, um, getting into rooms that I maybe don't feel like I belong in yet. All of these like classical, hustle culture, like get yourself out there, push yourself harder, get further. But with time, I've realized that yes, facing your fears is very important. Um, and getting yourselves into rooms that you're not ready for is very important. However, pushing yourself isn't as important. It's actually more uncomfortable and more daring to pull back and actually listen to yourself, to your body, to your purpose, and to realign. And the most difficult thing is actually putting your ego aside, really turning it off, and like actually moving in your purpose. I think that's like the most daring thing a person can be. I think it's the bravest thing to admit to yourself what your truest dream is and just go for it, however it looks like, and no matter what other people say.
I love that. That is so daring, and it's like moving in purpose. Like that is
Yeah.
literally really the most daring thing one can do, because everything around you tells you like to go opposite of that, right? It's
Yeah.
like go with the flow, go
Yeah.
with the trend, go with this or go with that. But no, being
Exactly.
rooted in the purpose aligns you to really just be able to sustain. You're listening to yourself. There are times where
Yeah.
you have to ebb and flow, right? There's an ebb and a flow. You got
For
to run
sure.
sometimes, you got to slow down sometimes. But
Yeah.
being rooted and it to be sustainable, like it's very important that you do align with your purpose. So
For
I
sure.
love that. You have something else you
Yeah.
want to add?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, like, I completely agree with what you just said, and I also think it's like it's just so vulnerable.
Hmm.
If you have the guts to state your dream, actually pursue it, it's an extremely, extremely humbling and extremely vulnerable position to be in. So whoever is inspired by this talk to go and do that, I just want to say we're here to support.
Yes. And so, how can we find you? again, we are streaming live from YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. How can people find
Yeah.
more about you and Quor?
Yeah, I have a LinkedIn page. You can find me on LinkedIn. I respond occasionally. We also have a website that's linked in the LinkedIn page and an Instagram.
Okay. And the name of her company is Quor, is Quor,
Yes,
Quor.
Quor.
Perfect. All right. So, you guys, again,
Mhm.
thank you so much for joining us today. Aisulu has been a pleasure. I've been connected with
Thank
her.
you so
We've
much.
been sharing purpose stories for over a year now, and I want to continue
Yeah,
doing this. So, I knew when I, started this series, you had to be like on this list. And so, I appreciate you for
thank
always
you.
being there and always, having very intentional and purposeful conversations. And so, again, please stay connected with Aisulu. You can find her on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Quor, and you have your new website. It's
IO.
Quor.io. Super simple. Quor.io. So, because the future doesn't wait, it doesn't belong to those who wait, right? So, it belongs to those who build. So, again, thank you, Aisulu, for being here. It was a pleasure. And we'll see each other
Thank you so
again
much for
soon.
having. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
having me. It was such a pleasure.
Yes, it
Thank
was.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, bye bye.